Hi everyone, so today I have come to East Delph Lakes where for this 24-hour session, well 20-hour session, I'd like to try and catch fish on some of my favourite supermarket baits. And as a kid, these are the sort of baits I was using in my early carp fishing career, because back then they were a much cheaper alternative to boilies. I'm not sure that is still the case these days, having seen the price of spam in the supermarket today. So I've got cat food, all that for £2.95. Or a tin of spam for £3.10. I'm thinking that is better value. But either way, I'd like to show you a few alternatives that I think can sometimes put fish on the bank when boilies may fail. Now another little twist for this session is I've been handed an assortment of pre-tied ready rigs for me to use. And back in my early carp fishing days, a lot of my fishing was done with ready tied rigs. So this session is going to be something of a throwback for me. There's a greater assortment of rigs here though than what was available back then. I've got all sorts to choose from Ronnie spinner rigs, got wide gape rigs on semi-stiff coated hook link, Illusion D rigs. Yeah, there's quite an assortment, but what I am going to go with that I think probably suits the choice of baits I have with me for this session, and that is the wide gape rig tied to the Camotex semi-stiff hook link, and also the curved short fluoro D rig which is tied up on the Illusion fluorocarbon. So yeah, that's what I'm going to go with. You just need to get these on the rods. I've got to be honest, this is the most amount of rigs I've ever had pre-tied for any of my sessions. I think if you look at my rig box now, I might have 2 rigs ready to go. So by having this amount of rigs ready at my disposal right now, I think I'm already winning. So I've got one rod in position now, and that's been fished on this right hand margin towards the far corner in amongst the reeds. Right now we're just getting into spring, and reed beds do seem to be a great holding area for the carp at this time of year. I think that it's something for them to rub on where they're trying to shed any leeches and parasites that they may have picked up over the winter months when they've been less active. So I do think they're a great holding area for the carp at this time of year. Now how I'm fishing this rod, instead of having my line running through the swim leading up to the rig, I'm instead fishing it washing line style, and I've done that by placing a storm pole over there with a slick bobbin attached, and I then cast the rig onto the bank rather than in the water, cast it onto the bank, walked round, picked up the rig, dropped it by hand in place really close to the margin, then put the line in the slick bobbin, come back to the rod, tightened up the line. That way all the line is running above the surface. It's not running through the water at all, it's running above the surface, and that means that the line concealment is absolutely impeccable. I mean, there's no line in the water to conceal apart from a very short bit that leads down from the storm pole down to the rig. That's nice and slack, and it means all that line is kind of hugging the contours of the lake bed. It's out of harm's way, the fish can't detect it. It really is the ultimate in line concealment. Now on the washing line rod, I'm fishing with cat meat. It is a really good bait. It can be a bit tricky when it comes to casting because it is so soft. There are ways around it, but because I'm literally just lowering it in by hand, then it's obviously not going to come off on the cast. It's just a case of lowering it in position just a few feet from the bank. Now the second rod that I'm about to put in position, that's going to be fished to the left. We've got this island with a big overhanging tree, and there's also a bit of a cut through a channel that goes through the island, and you've got some shallow water there and a reed bed, and it is an area where the fish do like to visit. And just on the corner of that island in front of this little channel, it's nice and firm and clean and gravelly, and the rig I'm going to present over that is the Illusion D-rig. Now my hook bait, because I'm casting to that, I've decided not to use the cat meat, and instead I'm going to use one of my favourite hook baits, a little piece of Peperami. And to add a little bit of attraction around my Peperami hook bait, I'm going to fish with a little mesh bag of diced up luncheon meat, and I'll show you how I go about doing all that in just a second. So I've got the second rod all rigged up, ready to cast out with a small piece of Peperami, but I want to use a little mesh bag of luncheon meat, or Spam, my 3-pound tin of Spam.
Emotional damage! Where's the therapy button?
So what I'm going to do, first of all, is just kind of cut a slice of Spam. Like that, like a fairly thin slice. And here I've got a small maggot riddle. And all I'm going to do is just push that Spam, push it through the riddle. Like that. That leaves you with lots of little tiny cubes of luncheon meat. Just got a PVA mesh tube here. Just a small, just make like a small walnut size bag there. There you go, a nice little mesh bag of luncheon meat cubes. So I'm just nicking on the little mesh bag of luncheon meat. This rod's all clipped up just off the end of the willow here where the little channel goes into the island. Really, really shallow there, which is where I think the fish are going to be with this really high pressure and the bright sunshine and warm temperatures. Nice. Well, the rods are finally out for tonight. There's about an hour left of daylight. It's been quite tricky today. It's been very warm for the time of year. Flat calm, no wind, very high air pressure, and the fish haven't really shown any signs of feeding whatsoever. I think our best chance of catching will be tonight, so I just hope that the cat meat and the Peperami can pay off like they used to for me when I was a kid. Well, good morning. Not a lot happened last night at all. The temperature really did drop though. I mean, it literally dropped 18 degrees from it being 18 degrees yesterday to it being 0. There was ice on the rods this morning, and yeah, I think Kieran had given up on me a little bit. I think he was surprised I didn't catch. He went off to get some nice sunrise shots, and while he was away, I had a take on the Peperami rod with a little mesh bag of luncheon meat, and I had another rod set up ready to go. So I've landed that fish, I've cast straight back out with another rod and a little mesh bag, and within, I think, about a minute, that same rod has gone again. So I've now got 2 fish waiting in the landing net, and one of them is an absolute stunner. Well, that was the first fish that fell to the Rami. He's not a monster, is he? Let's face it, he's probably 7 or 8 pounds, something like that. But he's a nice chunky fish. I'm sure he will grow up to be a monster one day. But after I had slid the net under him and cast the rod back out, it was only in a minute, and we caught this one. That's a really pretty scaly fish. Again, similar sort of size, 7 or 8 pound, but that's an absolute stunner. Doesn't matter how big he is, you've got to admit that is a gorgeous looking carp. Right, well, I'm going to slip both these fish back really quickly. There's obviously fish out there feeding, and I want to get a few more bites. It's only been about 20 minutes since I recast with that Peperami rod, and we got another one. Same rod, same rig, same bait, same spot. Well, before we have a look at this next fish, I'm just going to get the rod back in place. There's obviously a few fish in that area. That has been the one rod that's been doing all the bites so far. All the fish have fallen to the little PVA bags of luncheon meat with a small piece of Peperami, but I feel like having a change. And I'm going to switch over to using corn. It's classic carp bait, isn't it, really? What more can you say? It's caught carp since the dawn of carp fishing and will continue to do so for many more years to come. Carp just love eating the stuff. So that's what I'm going to switch over to now. I'm also having a slight rig change, although that is only really because I have ran out of the wide gape beaked rigs. So I'm now using the curve short. Yeah, it's a different hook pattern. To be honest, I've not found that one outperforms any other. I think it is just down to personal preference. While we're looking at these ready tied rigs, it's worth mentioning that there's 2 in a pack. They come with a quick change swivel and an anti-tangle sleeve to obviously attach the rig to the swivel and also to prevent tangles. They also come with a little pack of extender stops as well. Now the hair on these rigs on the size 6 looks about right for a 15mm bait, but if you're wanting to use bigger baits, or you're wanting to use, say, like a snowman setup, or you just want a larger separation between the boilie and the bend of the hook, there is a variety of different size stops to get the hair length absolutely perfect for what you need. So let's get one of these rigs on now with some corn. So just attaching the rig to the quick change swivel, slide the anti-tangle sleeve down, secure that rig in place, and it also improves the anti-tangle properties as well. Now on the rigs, they do come with the coating all the way intact down to the hook, but I want a little bit of flexibility. So all I'm doing there is just breaking that coating with my fingernails just above the liner. Now I think that little bit of movement there aids with the hooking properties of the rig. They're further improved as well by the inclusion of the liner. They really are a nice, neat rig. It's as good as anything I could tie myself, and when I look back at the ready tied rigs I was using back in the day, God, they're a huge improvement on those ones. So now I'm just going to put on a couple of bits of corn on the hair. So you can see there, that would be a little bit too close to the hook for my liking. But as I mentioned, these rigs do come with the extender stops, to allow you to get the perfect hair length. So there's our rig with the 3 bits of corn attached. That's a bite all day long. But what I'm going to do right now is put on a small mesh bag of corn for some added attraction. And then, once I've got the rod in place, I'll show you the fish that we've just landed. And there he is, another little fella, probably about 7 or 8 pounds, something like that. And another fish on the Peperami. But we've got another rig out there on that same spot, but this time with a different bait. Hopefully we can catch a carp on another one of our supermarket baits, and hopefully it will be a little bit bigger as well. Well, this 24-hour session is almost up now, but just a short while ago I did a lap of the lake and found a few fish at the opposite end of the lake, tucked away in a corner. So I put in a few handfuls of corn, went and checked on it again 10 minutes later, and there's a little bit of fizzing going on. It's the first sign of actual feeding fish I've seen since I've been here. So I've quickly reeled in the rods. I'm going to head off down there now. Hopefully we get one more chance before it's time to call it a day. A boil on the surface. There we go. So I'm just down at the other end of the lake now, and we've got a set of lily pads in the margin here. Obviously they're not all green, but you can see where they've died off over winter, and there's still sort of remnants of them on the surface. And we've got this sort of bank of reeds down here as well. There's lots of cover for the carp, and this is the sort of area I would expect to find them at this time of year, or any time of year for that matter. There was a little bit of fizzing coming up earlier where I had put the corn. It's just stopped. There's also lots of floating debris all over the surface here. I'm just having to wait for the wind to kind of push it out of the way so I can get a rig in place. There's loads of dead reeds and leaves and twigs all floating around that's collected in this area. Okay, well the fizzing has stopped, but I've got a little gap to cast to. Just need to sneak this lead in nice and quietly. And weave the line between all these floating branches. Well, that's gone in nice. Okay. Rod on the ground job. Well, the fish just there then, just boil on the surface just in front of where the rod is. Okay, a little tiny bit of corn over that rod. And hopefully we've got time for one more bite. Well, this just isn't going to happen. Even though that rig went in, really nice and stealthily. I have not seen anything, any signs of fish since I put that rig in place. This has been a really frustrating session. I mean, yeah, conditions aren't perfect, got mega high air pressure. Temperatures now were sort of approaching 20 degrees. Last night it went down to 0. Flat calm, no wind, not exactly the most carpy feeding conditions. But yeah, 3 fish on the bank. It's better than a blank. So we've got that to be thankful for at least. And hopefully I've highlighted some alternative baits to boilies. And also hopefully I've shown that if you don't have the time yourself to tie up your rigs before your session, you can catch carp by using the ready-made pre-tied rigs that you can find in the shops. But that is it for me. I need to hit the road, but I'll see you again really soon.